Explore the unknown with Paranormal M, your home for thrilling and eerie stories. Subscribe now and stay updated on every haunting tale. Let the mysteries captivate your imagination. That was not my husband. Due to me being chronically ill, my husband and I sometimes sleep in separate rooms. That's because he is a wild sleeper, as in tossing and turning and going all trow in the bed and pushing me off. Tonight was such a night. About half an hour ago, I heard my husband walk up the stairs saying, "Geez, it's almost morning," closing the door. The door of our bedroom closes in a very particular way. You have to click it after you close it. So I'm thinking my husband went to bed, and I went downstairs to get something to drink, and I see the light in the kitchen is still on. I think, oh, he forgot to turn off the light. Then I look into the living room and imagine my surprise, seeing that my husband fell asleep on the couch. So I freaked out, which woke him up. He was never upstairs, and this is not the first time. A while ago, me and my one teen daughters were watching a movie downstairs. My husband was watching TV upstairs. All of a sudden, I hear noise coming from the kitchen. While I look at the kitchen, my daughter says, "That's Dad, he's in the kitchen." I figured she saw him, but later it turns out she did not. She just assumed because of the particular noises. He got a stool where he sits on in the kitchen, which makes a certain sound. My husband never came downstairs. When I walked back upstairs, I didn't like the feeling. Happens all the time that the feeling is quote-unquote off, but it changes room. Both me and my husband see a dark shadow and silhouette every now and then, on the stairs, in the living room, etc. I often hear walking up the stairs when I'm upstairs myself, and when we moved here, we would always see and hear stuff around our house. But later it moved inside. And what might be worth mentioning now that I come to think of it, when my husband and I got together, he lived in a house which had a demonic presence. I never slept normal in that house, but when we got a new home together, I slept like a baby. And there's always activity around that house. That house was in my name, and in 2020 we moved here, and this house is in both of our names. My sleeping here is also bad. Sometimes I'm up for days, and in the beginning there was also activity around the house. Later it was in the house. My husband even saw a shadowy head and face pop up just a few centimeters and inches from his face. Totally freaked him out. But I'm just realizing this as we speak, that our former home was always around the house. I slept like a baby here. And my sleeping pattern in this house is similar to the demonic one. And what I'm also realizing just now is that it always mimics my husband, but never me or one of the kids, which is a little weird now that I think of it. I myself am sensitive to paranormal stuff, so is my daughter, actually, who assumed my husband was in the kitchen. And I say my husband because he is the stepdad to my two eldest. I also get touched a lot, and that thing is only happening to me. I'm the one who hears, like, a lot of weird stuff and sees things every once in a while. My husband is the one who sees it and things a lot instead of hearing it. I have no explanation on how it moved from outside to inside. Haunted house in London. So I've never been the kind of person to believe in ghosts. I'm a non-religious guy, but I've seen some odd things in my 26 years. But nothing to convince me 100% that the paranormal is legit. However, I have one interesting experience that tends to get interest and honestly has made me question my stance on the paranormal ever since. About 6 years ago, I was 20 years old and I was a student living in London. My latest flat contract had run out and I needed a place to live as soon as possible. I had very little money. I felt guilty needing my parents to be a guarantor. So, as any broke Londoner would do, I googled the cheapest place possible, somewhere I could move into the next day, and that's how last minute this was. I was fortunate, or actually, misfortunate to find a place available to move in that day. Contract signed. I had a place to live. Moved into this detached house with all my stuff the following day, and it was a dirty house, but the flat occupants were all 20 or 30-year-olds, 4 of them, and very friendly. The area was quiet, and I felt reasonably comfortable. Weird noises and objects moving. This house was always damp and cold. It was autumn, so it's not really surprising, but it was always an unpleasant atmosphere. The garden was overgrown and creepy. The windows that faced it were scratched, cracked, and looked dirty. The hallway light didn't work, so the entire interior of the living room and hallway connecting the 2 rooms were pitch black at night. The bathroom was just something else. And on my first night after speaking to one of my new flatmates, I was told that they've all experienced weird noises, especially scratching on the blackened window in the bathroom. I laughed this off as nonsense. Probably a tree brushing it when it gets windy outside. So, after a couple of weeks, I finally started noticing weird occurrences in the building. My room's window faced the driveway. I like to keep my curtains closed just because it was west-facing as far as the room goes, and I didn't like the sunlight pouring in and blinding me every day. So I would close the curtains in the morning, head to class, come home, find the curtains opened more than halfway. This happened every day, and in fact, I could come home from class, close them again, go out to work or see friends, come home to open curtains. Yet, when I was in the room for hours on end, they never moved when closed. Bit weird. My windows were closed and locked, and so was the bedroom door when I wasn't there. I was the only one with a key, I hope, and also above me was just an attic. No one lived up there, it was just a locked storage room, I'm guessing. But at night, I could hear what sounded like foot stomping, like 2 people walking around and kids running and sometimes whispers. Bit freaky. I thought maybe somebody in the house had access to this room and was using it at night, for who knows what. But no one was up there. The room was locked, and I would sometimes at night go up the stairs to the door and try and get to see who the hell was in there. Never any luck. Never saw anything, but could always hear those footsteps. This part is pretty relevant later on. One of my flatmates was a very religious man. I could hear him praying 5 times a day, and always very friendly and open to talk about his faith, and to listen to me stress about the awful state of the house, but he himself didn't hear or notice anything weird other than the unhygienic state of the place. He decided at one point to head home to Algeria for a few months, with his room locked. New flatmate. After 6 or 7 weeks of living there, one of the other occupants moved out, and a room was available there. I told a friend of mine that he was kind of desperate as I was weeks prior. He moved in within a few days and things were great. We worked and went to the same uni, so it was cool hanging out with a friend. Told him the stories, but due to his religious beliefs, he really wasn't a believer in ghosts, and like me, wasn't fazed by the stories. But he began to notice things too. The same stomping noises upstairs, and the scratching windows, and my curtains opening on their own. He felt like he was being watched all the time. He noticed the shed in the garden had a broken panel and could easily imagine somebody being inside sometimes watching us in the kitchen when we made food. Routine pest control opened the shed during a visit one day. Found 6 dead rats and a pile of hollowed out bees in there. Creepy, but no monsters. My friend and I were eating dinner after work in the kitchen one night. I was facing him in the door to the hallway, and while he was facing myself in the sliding glass door that gave access to the overgrown jungle garden behind, I remember seeing him turn pale and jump to his feet and ask me in a very frightened tone, "Can you come to my room?" And I laughed. I asked why. He said, "Seriously, can you please come to my room, please? No joke." He then bolted to his room like he was running away. So I finished my sandwich with the last bite, didn't even think to turn around to see what he was so spooked about. Got to his room, he locked the door, sat in his bed and turned on his PlayStation. After a few minutes, he calmed down, and as he started playing, he told me he saw something in the garden. A woman in a white dress, and she walked across the garden 1/2 meter from the glass. She almost floated past, and then she vanished. He kept saying, "We have to leave, we have to leave." And that noise was one thing. But when you see something, everything changes. My room scarred him, and, well, everyone else in the most. Another flatmate told us they'd seen me in my room, just peering at them in the driveway through a 20-centimeter gap in my curtains one night. They said they saw a shape of a person's head, but I wasn't there that night, or on any of those occasions mentioned. And I certainly don't peer at people through my window. And things get worse. 2 nights after the kitchen incident, I'm woken up at around 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. My friend's banging on the door, and it's like pitch blackness of the hallway, and I open it and he comes in shaking with fear, saying his bed was vibrating and moving. He can't stay here any longer. The next day, he speaks to a friend. He has a place to stay, so packs up most of his stuff and's gone. And within a few days, another person left. A little creeped out, but mostly annoyed with the poor state of the house. And at this point, we are the really last remaining occupants. And we're all looking for alternative living arrangements. And remember the religious guy that went back to Algeria? Well, he's been gone for months now and hasn't returned. The landlord makes a visit one day, and as he has a spare key, decides to inspect the room to make sure all is okay. So he opens it up, and we go in. Wow, his room was amazing. It was warm and cozy, no damp or cold, and honestly like a different house. It was nice. My last night there, I decided to move in with my partner, who has avoided this house pretty much the entire time I'd lived there. Maybe visiting once or twice. She hated it and hated being there and always felt uncomfortable. On the last night, I again heard weird noises, but this time in the hall. I was aware that I was home alone that night, as really the only other flatmate left was on vacation, but it was, as always, very dark when I opened the door. No one there. Walked into the living room, and the window at the back that faced the side of the house was making weird scratching noises. Needed to use the bathroom, and as a necessity, I had to carry a torch to do the job during these hours. Walked into the bathroom, do my business, and as I'm zipping my shorts, my torch briefly shines over the window. I, for some odd reason, looked, as if expecting to see something. I didn't. I walk out of the room, and I don't know why, but I decided to look at that window again without the torchlight. I saw the shape of a large man. Went back to my room, locked my door, and all night I heard just feet stomping upstairs in the attic. Couldn't sleep, so I moved all my things into a pile in the middle of the room, sat in the bed, and waited for sunrise. Got a taxi in the morning. Finally got the hell out of there. Couldn't pay me to go back. I play hide and seek with a ghost. Here's my ghost experience. My family meets for dinner every Tuesday night at my grandparents' house. Everybody comes, aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. It's a tradition that we've had going on for over a decade now. Us teens and kids are usually pushed to play outside, and being that my grandparents' house is on a decent-sized property, we tend to explore and make up games. Well, recently, our favorite game is flashlight hide and seek in the dark. The rules are simple. Wait till it's dark out, Seeker has a flashlight, you shine it on somebody and say their name. If you're right, they have to go sit on the porch till the game is over. If you're wrong, the person can hide again. We play till everybody's found or have to go home, and usually there's at least 6+ people hiding and maybe 1 to 3 seekers. Not long after playing this game, pretty much every week, we started noticing after a few rounds that somebody extra was playing and would hide in unusual places. They were hard to reach and rather dangerous, but very obvious if you shone a light in them. Places like pricker bushes and trees under the shed. Even in the window of an abandoned RV. And at first, we thought it was our younger cousin who didn't normally follow the rules and would hide in odd places, then claim that they were never found. We also thought he was lying and let it go. So one night we're playing and I saw my brother hiding in a spot, and he yelled at me to move away, and I tried to join him. I was forced to run across the way and hid on the other side of the swing set, hid in some trees. And the only thing between us was a large pricker bush that nobody seems to hide in. We were giggling during this game because my sister was the seeker. She kept walking past us even though we were very poorly hidden. She shined the light close to my brother and I at the bush between us, and this made us go quiet. And my sister said, "I found you, come out, I see you." She broke the rules by naming every kid that was still playing the game, which is only 4 people left hiding. So for a second, I stood up because I thought she was talking about me, and my brother stood up too, and that's when somebody stood up right in front of my sister from the bush between us. And what made it so much more heart-stopping was that it didn't even make a sound when they stood up from the prickers. Nothing caught their clothes, no leaves rustled, and silence. Yet they stood up very quickly. Neither my brother nor I have ever seen this kid before. He was too short for any kid playing the game. Even my cousin was taller than this kid. My sister said, "Who are you?" before she screamed through the flashlight at the kid, and I didn't even take my eyes off of him. I was frozen. The flashlight just flew right into the bushes where it should have hit the kid in the chest, and as soon as the light disappeared into the branches, the kid sat back down and crawled backwards back into the bushes, never making a sound till he was gone. My brother and I had our jaws on the floor, and we ran out, asked her sister what happened to confirm our stories. She said she swore she could see right through him, and he had no arms or eyes. That was only the first time we realized that there was a ghost playing with us, and since then we would see him hiding from time to time. Sometimes we'll go looking for him to call him out. He usually just stands up and disappears. Over 20+ people and counting have found him. We invite anybody to play as the seeker to find him. Even a few adults have seen him when playing with us. I don't really believe in ghosts till this game, and now I'm determined for people to play it if they don't believe. SOS. Something in my house will not leave me alone. Don't know what to do. It started when I was a kid. My cousin who died, never really met her when I was 1, she died. I call her name basically, and she would appear as a sort of dark shadow floating. Just a vague shadow, and I knew it was her, and I could hear her sometimes. I chalked it up to my imagination until the same cousin started popping up again when I was 18, when I moved into her old guest suite. I was at my aunt's. They were like a second mom to me. All friendly, nothing angry from her, but I mean, come on, ghosts are creepy, and it's hard to accept they exist even as a spiritual person. I think she entered my body for about 2 minutes on her death anniversary that year while my aunt was telling a story about her. Hasn't happened since. Current issue. Anyways, that's been the clearest experience. But this past year, this place I live in across the country, it has something that will not leave me alone. I've saged, I've done a 7-day candle uncrossing ritual, I've prayed. It just keeps trying to show itself to me, and I can tell it's trying to tell me something, and I don't know how to figure that out really, and I'm just wary of dabbling in areas I'm not educated in. I don't want to get caught in something between or something, I don't know. Scared my first roommate, who was horrible to me, by the way. Scared him out of the house, and now I live alone. It opens doors, it makes shadows, it creaks, and the lights flicker when I talk about it. I've tried to do a sort of yes or no back and forth thing to try to figure out why it won't leave me alone, but nothing worked. And last night, 2 times it started blasting music from my speakers downstairs randomly. It was playing music that I wrote and made. My laptop was closed, my phone wasn't playing anything, and I can't explain why. But I knew when I went down to turn the music off that this is not something trying to attack me, I don't think. I'm moving out in 2 weeks, and a psychic friend told me she thinks it's following me specifically, and not necessarily in the house as its home. My dad died last year, and he dabbled in magic, but I stayed away from it because it was some spook deep south black magic stuff. I just don't want to mess around in it. I have a storage room I'm paying for in another country full of a bunch of his magic stuff that I've been avoiding unpacking because I don't know what to do with it. But I don't know. I haven't gotten any clear indicators about this as him, really. Don't think it is, because I think he would communicate more clearly or something, and I think this thing might be more feminine. Then again, I have no clue. I think I have an attachment. I've always been, quote-unquote, sensitive to spiritual things. When I was little, my biological mother, I was adopted at 13, was a self-proclaimed black witch and used me in seances. And no, it was not fun. Yes, it terrified me at the time, so I genuinely believe in the paranormal. And from the time I was adopted, I've always had this spirit that I felt, and I would hear it imitate my family members, push things off the counters, and have troubling dreams. It's even slammed doors in front of me when I wanted to go into a different room. I thought it was an evil one because at one point I had a genuine breakdown. I was causing harm to myself and saying violent threats to people and ended up pretty much in the psychiatric hospital. I don't really remember any of this or the 2 weeks of being in the hospital, but my adopted family had a priest come bless the house and me. And for a little while, things were okay, but then we moved and I started to hear whispers and things started to move again. And while I'd be in my room with the door open, every single time it would close, and sometimes I would say, "I have to open for a reason, so leave it alone," and the door would just stop midway. I later moved in with my sister and her family, but still things happened. Never paid much attention to it because it wasn't harmful or overly scary. Until my nephews were starting to get scared to be in the room or my room or even alone with me because they would always see a really tall man around me. I lived in her attic, which had the kids' toys room down the hall, and every time I shut the door, a specific toy would go off without batteries. I'd open the door and apologize and it would stop. I nicknamed the spirit Toby. Last year, I moved in with my fiancé, and it seems Toby has followed. It started off with turning the lights on when we were gone or noises on the second floor at night. My fiancé told me to just ignore it because the more attention it gets, the more it wants to act out, so I believed him and I started to ignore it. Whenever we go into the basement, he gets scratches. The fridge was constantly being opened, and the lights would all be turned on as if I were gone for too long. We would even hear footsteps upstairs and things falling, but we'd still try to ignore it. And then I would hear somebody running down the stairs at night. And our room is connected to the stairs, and we've even been woken up to loud bangs on the second floor. We just let Toby do whatever he wanted since he was never really hostile unless he went into the basement. We put up Catholic blessed rosaries on the basement door and the doors to our house because his youngest son, being 5 years old, had been having nightmares and accidents at night. So for a few weeks everything calmed down, but now it seemed that Toby's upset with everything and everyone, and even me. While we were asleep one night last week, my fiance gasped and jumped out of the bed. It scared me awake and I asked what happened. He said that something just tried to push him out of the bed, and he's always calm and collected but genuinely startled, which made me freak out. And one night our cat was running around upstairs. He hissed and we heard a commotion. Then, when we looked at the stairs, the cat was thrown down. It looked as if it was kicked, and we watched as he flew down and missed every stair, hitting the wall at the end of the stairs. Got up, yelled at Toby for trying to hurt the cat, and the next day my dog was in the living room, and I'm in my bed, and I hear her growling, and got up. I was about to enter the living room when she yelped and ran past me. She was whining with her tail tucked. She was shivering when I picked her up, and once again I scolded Toby. And just a few days ago, we heard something fall upstairs. When I went a little bit while later, a small board with 2 screws was sitting right at the top of the steps, perfectly placed to where I would have stepped on the screws if I wasn't paying attention. Our front door that's connected to the second floor is opened in the middle of the night while it was shut and locked. We almost never use the upstairs door since the porch is unsafe right now. My fiancé had swept the house and every time found nothing. Seems like Toby has gotten angry again and is taking it out on my fiancé, his son, and her pets. Didn't like my nephews or the family. Could this be the same spirit that is just following me everywhere? Quantum jumping. This was not a dream, by the way. This was in February, and I was at my aunt's house because my parents went out for the night and I decided to spend time with her. Around 9 p.m. I got a text notification pop up from my mom saying that we're home now. So I was like, cool, it's getting late anyway, so I'll head home. I have to take a highway to get back home, and there's 3 lanes that split midway, and the left lane turns into a bridge-like lane. I know there were a few cars behind me and a few in front of me. Everything went fuzzy for 2 seconds, and I just thought it was too dark outside and my eyes played it up a bit. I remember feeling a bit off because the lane just kept going. It wasn't ending. I take that left lane every day from work to home, so I know how long it takes for that lane to meet back to the other 2. It felt like I was on it forever, and then the time on my clock jumped a full hour ahead, and it wasn't daylight savings time or anything where the clock would have changed times. I was like, the fuck? Car malfunction, maybe. The lane finally met up with the 2, but there was no cars. Not behind me, none any of the 3 lanes. Mind you, it's Saturday night in Sydney. Everybody's on the road going out at this time. But there was no one. Not even the lanes going to the other side. I was like, what the fuck is happening? I got home about 6 minutes later and my parents' car wasn't outside, so I thought maybe they parked in the garage. Go inside, it's completely dark, no lights on. Called out for them, no response. They aren't in their rooms either. Picked up my phone to call Mom and asked where they are, and she said, we're still out. I was like, what do you mean? You texted me saying you guys were home, so she just said, no, I didn't. Checked my phone, and there was no text. I went, oh, sorry. Hung up because I had no idea what the fuck just happened to me in the last 30 minutes or so. So did I like quantum jump or something? Weird feeling at 9/11 Memorial. I recently visited New York City with a large group from my school. And one of the things we did in our trip was visit the 9/11 Memorial. Going into it, we were told that we were most likely going to react in some way. It was going to be different than what we thought our reactions were going to be. Considering that I don't know anybody who was involved or affected by 9/11, whether directly or indirectly, I didn't think I would react as strongly as I did. As we were walking to the entrance, I felt completely fine. I was talking and engaging in conversations around me. I started going down the escalator down the wooden floor. I started to feel off, and as soon as I stepped foot in the wood, I felt nauseous, disoriented, and sick. Standing still felt like I was standing on a boat, rocking up and down. When I walked, I would stumble, and had a bit of trouble being able to find my balance. Didn't even make it to the very bottom before I had to lean against the wall and just take some deep breaths. As I went around the memorial, it kept getting worse, but there's a few places where it was so bad I felt like I was going to pass out. And some of those places where I felt the worst was at the support beams and where the tower stood, and the exhibit with the drawings of the children affected by the event. At first, I thought maybe I was hungry or maybe dehydrated. After a while, I noticed the drinking water and chewing gum, sucking on candy isn't helping, and got the feeling that I needed to get out of there and go back upstairs. Seems I was right, considering that as soon as I got on the escalator going up, I felt better, and as soon as I was fully out of the gym and the memorial, I would breathe and walk better, and the nausea was completely gone. It felt like a fever dream. Thought that I had just made it up or something, but later when I was getting my medication from the school nurse in the trip, I described what I felt. She told me several of the students felt the same way. Later during the trip, we went to the Met, and in the armor and instrument section, I felt the same way, but less intense. And this is the first time I've ever felt something like this before, and considering I only felt it in places where historical things happened and where people may have died or experienced pain, makes me think that maybe it has something to do with that. I don't particularly believe in the paranormal and stuff like that, but considering this experience, I've started to think that maybe some of it's real. I've also been considering that it may be a reaction to the pollution in New York City, considering I come from somewhere a lot less polluted, and that has a lot less pollution. Dreaming with dead relatives. When I was 20, my aunt got cancer. She'd treated it and was sent home healthy. But I dreamed of her getting uterine cancer, and not too long after, she fell ill again. And when taken to the hospital, she got diagnosed with uterine cancer and had already propagated to her blood and bones, so not much to do about it. I dreamed of her again after 4 months of her getting palliative treatment, and this time I heard a doctor talk to my mother telling her state's worsened quite quickly this last week. Don't think she'll make it the next month. Didn't talk to my mother about this dream, only to my sister, and she was maybe 2 weeks and 4 days later informing me that my aunt passed away that morning. Years ago, I dreamed of me being in my grandmother's house, standing next to her empty and neatly made bed. I saw how her room started to fill with a thick fog, and all of a sudden her bed was no longer empty. 2 children were now sitting on it looking at me. One of them was a boy with an old-fashioned clothing and his face just smudged with dirt. He was looking at me with a very sad expression. Next to him was a little girl, but younger than him. She also had old-fashioned clothes, but she was completely damp, dress soaked in water. And her face, I couldn't see if it was covered by a black cloud maybe. I looked at them with curiosity, and they started talking to me. But just not with their mouths. Their mouths weren't moving at all, and yet I could hear them cry and call for their mother. They were saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom, where's Mom? We want our mommy, and why is she not here? And where is she? Why'd she leave us, and where's our mommy?" And I remember this because of how heartbreaking their cries were. I was looking at them, and in the back of my dreaming mind, I could feel the words relatives and grandma's loss, like strongly. The very next time I saw my grandmother, I asked her if she knew of anybody in the family who'd had a miscarriage, and she said that she herself had 2. The first had been a boy, and the second a girl. The boy was completely formed, and yet still a fetus, so she buried him in a small box of matches. The girl, on the other hand, was nothing more than a blob, but they had been about the same amount of weeks when she lost them, so her doctor said it was a girl. She couldn't bear to keep the little ball of meat, so she threw her to a river nearby. Oof. Last year, I dreamed with my great-grandmother and her sister. I only met my great-grandma and had only seen photos of her sister. Aunt Lala, the family calls her. It was when she was already very old and very different to her younger self. And somehow in my dream, I saw these two women and thought, yeah, that's my great-grandmother and Aunt Lala. And of course, it's them. They were arranging the table for dinner for some guests, and then a fat, bald man comes through the door holding a little paper bag in his hand. He's wearing a white formal shirt inside of his pants, and it's held up with suspenders. He had a very particular purple stain on his head. When I woke up, I immediately called my mother to ask about these people. I described the three of them best I could, and she looked at me with a concerned look in her face. She asked me how I knew that these people existed and if I had only met my great-grandmother a few months before she died when I was a baby, and Lala had died long before I was even born. Also, don't own a single photo of them at the ages where I saw them in my dreams, so I couldn't have recognized them. I shrugged. I guess it just turns out not only were they my grandma's mom and aunt, but the man who had died 8 years before I was born was my grandma's uncle who used to bring them candy, which was quite a luxury at the time in the zone that we lived in. Every time he visited them, too, he would transport the candies in a small paper bag. 4. A few weeks ago, I dreamed with Aunt Lala. She became a sort of guide in my dreams up to this point. We were both sitting on chairs. We were resting in silence, when out of nowhere, she says, "We have a murderer in the family, you know. A son of mine, yes. One day, he decided he was going to kill his wife and daughter, and so he did. I woke up after that. Asked my sister. She also has a thing with dreams, but she dreams with the living and always about the future. She knew about this new information her dead relative had decided to suddenly drop on me. I wanted to confirm if it was real or fact, or if it was just a weird dream. To my surprise, when my sister heard the news, she was just as shocked as I was when I woke up. She said she had no idea, and maybe it was just a dream that happened to have Lala in it. Decided to drop the subject and stay with the answer my sister gave me. But this last Monday, I overheard my mom talking with her brother and say, yeah, very weird how the mind of a killer works. You remember Uncle something? Yeah, I do. He made Grandma Mary suffer. To what my mother replied, not just her, the entire family. Just imagine how terrible it must be to know that your own brother killed his daughter and wife in cold blood. I think I'm haunted by a demon. Okay, so I'm a 21-year-old male. This all started back when I was 19. My first experience with this thing was in a fucked up dream. I remember it started in an empty shopping center's parking lot. There was constant sirens ringing, and it was nearly nighttime with a blood moon, and these giant creepy fucking skin things. They looked like people with no head walking on all fours way off in the distance. I remember walking into the store, and as I did, I was instantly in a black bedroom, staring at a wall with a missing persons poster. The poster was of a girl, I'm certain, but I've never seen this person before. And under the poster, written in blood, was missing. I've had nightmares before, but what made this shit extra scary was that in the corner of my eye, there was this black figure staring at me. When I looked at it, I'd be back outside in the parking lot. This time, I was closer to the entrance, and two of my friends were with me. One of them was crying on the floor with their guts out of their stomach, and the other was happily smiling at me also with his guts out, except he was eating them. They were falling back out of his stomach. He was doing this over and over with a smile on his face. Then I went back to the shopping center, and once again the black room. But this time, it was a missing poster of me with some blood writing and a thing in the corner. I looked at it, and I was outside again in the same spot, except I could see the thing clearly now, and it was hugging my friends. My friends were smiling and had their guts hanging out of them, and They all welcomed me into the hug, which I accepted for some reason, and then I woke up. Turns out I was in a double dream, apparently, because I was laying in bed and looking where my door was, and I could see it fucking staring at me, hunching in the corner. I tried to move, and it took all my energy to roll off the bed, and when I did, I woke up properly, and I was back in my own bed on the other side of it. Ever since then, I've been seeing it rarely in dreams and in real life, and recently, when I was walking at night with one of my friends, he was the one who was eating his own guts from the dream, we both saw it from a distance crossing the street and just disappear. And I've seen it waving at me before, just standing straight in the distance, looking at me from over a roof, like bunk bed style. Tons of other shit. Whenever I dream of it, I'm always perfectly calm and happy, and I feel a family-like love toward it, and it acts like a caring mother. It's really creepy, man. If anybody's ever heard anything about something like this, is there any way I can get it to stop? I don't have any mental disorders like schizophrenia or anything, so I know it's not that, but what's going on? Haunted Home Depot. So I've worked with Home Depot for a number of years. The store I used to work at, I had quite a few weird experiences, as did a lot of other associates. The store doesn't have the happiest history to start with. Quite a few associates have died rather suddenly, and at least 2 by suicide that I know of. Not at the store, but I do wonder if any of that plays a part in it. I have a number of experiences to share, but I'll just share the ones that stick out the most. One of the more basic things that happened is things flying off the shelf at night. I've had a few people tell me that it happened to them, and one night I had that happen to me as well. I was at the end of an aisle, and I was straightening up. The store was closed, and nobody else was on my end of the building, and suddenly, at the end of the aisle, a bunch of brooms and other cleaning supplies just went flying off the shelf. Like a shadow figure has always been seen by a number of people in outside gardens at night. So I'm walking the department one night after closing. We were told to always check the aisles, make sure no one was hiding out. A few times I thought I would catch a glimpse of someone turning the corner of an aisle, only to never be able to find anything there. And when I shared that with someone else who also frequently closed, they said that him and the manager spent a good 10 minutes walking around the garden department because they were sure they saw someone after closing. I also had a new guy once tell me that sometimes at night he'd get really freaked out when working outside at night. The next incident happened about a week after an associate passed away from a sudden heart attack. We were having an all-store meeting early one Sunday morning. That's before the sun was even out, and all of us were sitting down in the main lumber aisle, and our store manager was talking. Suddenly, the front doors to the building opened. They were supposed to be locked, and our store manager ignored it and kept talking, and they opened again. Someone laughed and said, "That must be John." After saying that, the doors opened and closed one last time and didn't do it anymore for the duration of the meeting. The last one I want to share happened before I started working at the store, but still pretty interesting. Probably about 10 years ago, Home Depot tried installing those buttons you push in each department that would ping an associate to a certain department if no one was around. My dad was working overnight at the time there, and he said that there was only 5 people in the whole building that night. He said the overhead speaker kept going off, paging for someone to come to the paint department when no one was working in that side of the building, or even happened while everybody was on break, and of course it could have been a malfunction, but it only happened that night. These aren't all the things that have happened over the years, but just a few that really stick out to me. Don't know if all of them are paranormal, but I thought they were strange enough to share here. The store overall has a strange feeling. I've since moved to another store in another state, and the atmosphere is completely different. I haven't had anything even remotely strange happen there. A large black dog. My dad used to be a truck driver. He used to train people from time to time. One night when traveling across the country on a long dark highway in the Midwest, he said he was really struggling to stay awake. His trainee had just went to the back of the truck to try to get a nap, and he was just trying to get their next stop to happen. He said that all of a sudden a huge black dog with glowing red eyes appeared in the middle of the road. It rushed toward his truck and literally passed through it. He said he sat there in silence and kept driving, trying to convince himself he was really tired and probably just seeing shit at that point. This is when the guy he was training gets up, sits down in the passenger seat without saying anything, lights a cigarette and just sits there for a minute. The guy then asked him, "Did you see that?" My dad just is like, "Yep, we're pulling over at the next truck stop." My dad always heard that seeing a large black dog like that when driving was an omen of death if you kept driving. And what's interesting is a friend of mine, her mom also had a similar experience when driving late at night, basically having no sleep, and she also pulled over to a truck stop and took a nap. Now onto my experience. It wasn't as grand as the other stories I heard are, but this morning I had a similar experience. Been working for 14 days straight, having been working 12-hour shifts all week, and last night I only got about 3 hours of sleep. I'm so tired I forgot to even grab my glasses before leaving. So it's 2 a.m., I'm headed to work, and no one else is on the road, and right in front of me on the road I saw a large black dog materialize for a moment. Then it just vanished. Needless to say, it woke me up enough to get to work, but honestly I'm tired and sleep-deprived, and it's totally possible I'm just seeing shit at this point, but thought somebody might enjoy the story anyway. My encounters. I've had 2 encounters, at least I think they were, with the paranormal. Both were from when I was a lot younger. I'm 17 now, almost 18, and these were probably from when I was around 5 or 6. But these memories are super vivid, and some of the only memories I have from them. My first encounter was at an old house. 2-story house, 2 rooms downstairs, and what was the parents' room and what was my half-brother's room when he was there. This happened after my parents' divorce, but before my mom's work friend and her 2 sons moved in with us. So before the parents' bedroom, we had a hallway with a bathroom, and at the end was my half-brother's room. This was late at night, I think, and I remember the hallway being super dark. Maybe some light coming in from the patio window or something, but anyways. I was walking down the hall for whatever reason, and in the doorway was this floating figure. White dress, no face, at least that I can remember. No legs, but it had arms. I think it had hair. Possibly black, I don't know. It was just floating there. Just a white dress with a torso floating in the doorway. Little kid me didn't even register it for a few seconds, and when I did, I ran. Never saw it again. My second encounter was maybe when I was 6 or 7, maybe 8. Can't remember for sure, but I think it was when me, my mom, and my sister were living with our grandparents the first time. My grandparents live in a small neighborhood. At the end of the road, there's a house, and the road continues to the left and then goes into one of those loop ends with houses around it. That house used to be my friend's house before he moved away. Can't remember when he did, but this happened after the house was vacant. Me, my sister, and my cousin were walking outside. I was looking into the side window of that house and saw a floating white dress again. It was very similar to the one I saw at our old house, but I feel like it was a different spirit. Can't say how, I just feel like it. But it was just staring at us from the window, floating up and down. I remember this one more vividly because my cousin saw it too. We both freaked the hell out, and she grabbed my sister and we ran back to my grandparents' house and just kind of stood in front of the TV panting and yelling about what we saw. I yelled about it for so long and so loud I was out of breath and almost passed out because I forgot to breathe. Now that I think about it, this one is quite possible that it could have been a squatter and we just saw it wrong. I think that house is still vacant now, and I might go look at it next time I visit my grandparents. Remember the window I saw the face in, too. What are these creatures, and why do they move in a pattern? Me, a 22-year-old female, and husband, a 24-year-old male, have moved into our own home about a week ago. The house is in a very quiet area. It's very close to a church. And on Sundays, we can hear the music of the church from our living room. Now, my husband works very early hours. He goes to work at about 5 in the morning. And where we live, 5 in the morning is still pretty dark out. I waited with him on the curb for his ride to work, and yesterday morning my husband said that he saw what looked like dogs walk in a circle motion in the light in front of the church. I looked, but I really didn't think anything of it. It just looked like stray dogs looking for food, but this morning was different. As we got outside, I realized the neighboring dogs, as well as my dog, were barking nonstop as if warning us of something. My dog especially kept almost pushing me back into the yard, but I dismissed her. That's when my husband saw the quote-unquote dogs again. At first, we only saw one of them, but it quickly turned into 2, then 3, then 4, walking in a light in front of the church in an almost circular pattern with their noses pointed upwards. I thought it was strange, but I didn't try to lean into it too much until the biggest dog, and I'm 5 feet tall, and this dog's body would probably be the same height as just above my waist, till the biggest dog moved away from the circle, still in the light though, stared directly at us. It stared for a few seconds, then quickly moved toward a tree, and that quote-unquote dog walked past the tree, but what emerged from the other side of the tree wasn't a dog, but a black human-like figure, maybe 7 or 8 feet tall, staring directly at us. The figure also only stared at us for a few seconds before it went behind the tree, and the quote-unquote dog emerged from the other side and went back to moving in a circle-like pattern. When my husband's ride finally arrived, the light shined on the dogs, and their eyes didn't reflect the light like most dogs' eyes do. Almost hollow, like their eyes were absorbing the light and not reflecting it. And I must mention, I did not really feel scared or threatened. I felt calm while my husband turned into a nervous wreck. What are these creatures? Can't find anything from the research I've done. Heard a Facebook Messenger call, but no device was found. Want to share something strange that happened to me and my wife in June of 2022. We were at home, casually watching a movie in the living room. That's when something completely unexplained occurred. Out of nowhere, we heard a distinct Facebook Messenger ringtone. It wasn't from the movie or the TV, it was coming from right next to our sofa. At first, we thought it was a glitch in the audio or maybe a part of the movie's sound, but it continued for several seconds. It wasn't a faint sound either, it was loud and clear. We paused the movie, checked our phones, and we only had our phones but nothing else, and we checked everything. None of them had an incoming call or missed a message or any sign of activity. We even went through the app histories, checked notifications, and verified the Messenger wasn't even open on any of the devices. We thought that the sound could have come from our neighbor's apartment, but it was unlikely because the sound was so clear, and especially coming out from beside the sofa, and the apartment had very thick wall. We could barely listen to any sound from there. We even moved furniture and checked behind the cushions, thinking maybe we had missed something, like a speaker or something. There was nothing. After about 10 seconds, the sound stopped just like a regular missed call. It didn't show up in any of the message logs, and we didn't hear it again. We were left feeling unsettled, and the experience didn't make sense. We couldn't come up with a logical explanation. Anybody ever experienced anything similar, and is there a logical tech-related explanation, or could this be something more? I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories. if your cache is maxed out on your Facebook Messenger, and somebody could have called a day earlier or 2 days earlier, and it can still make the Facebook Messenger sound. I saw something on the side of the road. It was eating a dead dog or a dead goat. I really wish I took a picture to ensure that I'm not making this up. But the bus immediately left, and this is not fiction. I'm not crazy, and I swear to God that I know what I saw, and it gave me nightmares. Instantly, this experience reverted me back to that little kid who was afraid of going out at night because of all the stories his family told him. So let me explain. I'm a first-year college student. Every weekend I go home to my hometown, which is maybe 2 hours away by bus from the city. That's the city that I attend university in. That way I can spend time with my family and not get homesick. I spent the entire bus ride watching movies on my phone because I was bored. It was around 7 in the evening, if I remember correctly. I put my phone in my bag because I was around 15% and I wanted to preserve the power. The bus was already halfway to my home, according to Google Maps at least. We were in a rural area, mountains and a big forest toward the right side of the bus, and on the left are a few houses and more forest. The bus slowed down to the point of nearly stopping. Because a couple vehicles were slowing down in front of us, it just made me look out the window next to me, and that's where I saw it. I couldn't believe what I was fucking seeing, and I wasn't the only one. The guy sitting beside me also saw it. On the side of the road underneath the streetlight, we saw what looked like a naked person crawling on all fours, eating what looked to be a dead dog or a dead goat. There was blood everywhere, and it was eating it in a savage manner while dragging it into the woods. I immediately got out my phone to take a picture, but the bus was already speeding up and I couldn't see it anymore. What the hell did I just see? It looked human. Scariest part's just how it looked like my grandmother's description from her stories. Skin black as coal, wild unkempt hair, eyes that glowed in the dark when faced with light. I turned to the guy sitting beside me and told me to never speak of it ever again, and why? Every time I think back to it, I'm reminded of the stories they used to tell us as kids. Stories from our folklore about man-eating evil monsters that hunted at night. We call them aswang. Humans by day, but hunt for children and pregnant women at night. Shapeshifters that can turn into animals to fool people. Some steal corpses and replace them with banana stalks, while others have wings and fly atop roofs to make their long tongues to suck blood. I heard stories about this a lot because a lot of my older family have encountered these bastards before. My grandma had snuck inside their house during a power outage and tried to hurt my newborn aunt. She saw it crawling on the ceiling. What the fuck? My grandpa got out his 1911 and scared it away. My aunt, who lives in the mountains, said that one of them was climbing on the top of a roof. Unexplained things keep happening. Growing up for 24 years straight, I've not experienced really one paranormal encounter. That was until 2 months ago, where out of nowhere, random handprints will keep appearing on the windshields of my car that's not mine or anybody that's been in my car. I'll wipe and clean it, but the next day a new one that was 100% not there before would pop up in a different size. The size was never consistent. Sometimes it was handprints, sometimes it was like somebody left scribbled fingerprints on my windshield. The prints were always from the inside, not the outside, and I always made sure my car's locked and also parked my car inside the garage. Here are more unexplained encounters. 3 weeks ago, I'm at the park. And I'm with my mom. Just the two of us in the car at 11 p.m. There was no one there but us. She stayed on the phone, speaking with her friends whilst I slept. Hour goes by, and as I get ready to reverse my car and leave, I realize the back windshield is all foggy. Somebody left scribbled like fingerprints on the left side of the back windshield from the inside, and it seemed as if somebody was playing with the foggy window. I drove home immediately, told my mom about it, and she said, "No wonder why I keep talking on my phone. I thought I saw a figure walk past her car, so I quickly got up, but there's no one." Chills. A week ago, as I drove into the driveway, randomly the hazard lights turned on by themselves. My hand was nowhere near the red button for it to magically turn on by itself. And tonight, I parked my car at the nearest chemist to buy some Band-Aids. Got back into the car, left hand resting on the passenger seat, right hand on the steering wheel. And magically, the windscreen wipers turned on by itself. No other explanation for what could have been strong enough to pull that control stalk down. It's not the driver, being me, pulling it from the wipers to turn on, and eerily, when I pull the control stalk up to turn off, it confirms to me that something really did pull it down for the wipers to even activate. I could have just had hazard lights, maybe something wrong with my car and I need to get it fixed, but wiper situation makes me think it's something more paranormal. What I'm wondering is why all these weird encounters keep happening to me, especially when these unexplainable things that never happened before, truly so random and abnormal land. Wish it would just go away. If anybody can debunk this and say I'm probably just reaching and thinking too much, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Paranormal or parallel. This incident happened some years ago. I believe it was 2014. I don't know why it still bothers me every now and then. Maybe for the fact that I haven't got any understanding of what happened, how or why. And if there's anybody who's experienced anything similar to this, please feel free to share. Well, like I stated, in 2014, my boyfriend purchased this huge mobile home, which had coming handy being the fact that we had been kind of homeless at the time. Our beautiful daughter had been 3 at the time, and we were grateful for our new home. The mobile home consisted of a small kitchen, a dining area which opened into a bed which was behind the driver's seat, and then there was another bed toward the back where there was also a small bathroom, a sink, and even a small shower. This is the bed that we slept in all together. Well, one day, my boyfriend's cousin, P, was visiting us from our town. He decided to spend the night with us. We offered him the pull-out bed near the front, and he loved the ladies, so I invited my girlfriend T over to meet him. They hit it off. We had some drinks, and we all decided to go to bed around 7. My girlfriend T decided to sleep with P in the pull-out bed up front, but she had to work around 10 a.m., so they both sleep pretty quickly. My boyfriend and her daughter were already fast asleep too, so the only one left awake was me. I wasn't quite ready to turn in just yet. Left to go up the street quickly to grab some cigarettes from the corner store that was just a block away. When I returned, everyone was still knocked out, so I quickly smoked my cigarette, then quietly crawled into the bed with my daughter and boyfriend. Now this is where it gets weird. I must have woke up around 11 or 12, and I couldn't believe that I was in the pull-out bed up in the front. P, what the fuck? P was a pretty big guy, and he looked as confused as I did. How the hell did I end up in the bed with him? And also, I was on the other side of him near the window, nestled down in the covers. My boyfriend gave me a sly look, but he knows that is not the way I get down, and I don't understand what happened. I know I got into bed with my family. Why would I get into bed with my friend and her date? It wouldn't happen. I never sleptwalked in my life either. In broad daylight. Didn't go to the restroom, sleepily crawl into the wrong bed either, so later on I called my girlfriend T, who was at work, and I asked her where I was when she left for work around 9ish. She said I was in the bed with my family. So whatever happened had to occur between the time she left and when I woke up around 11 something, but what? Still have no explanations, and it still creeps me out to this day. Thoughts?